All right, so what do you have for the YouTube people this time?
Well, I was thinking about some of the things that I remember that people take for granted these days. One of the things like TV, we never had a TV when I was a kid. We had a radio, and it had a battery in it. I can remember when we didn't have electricity in our house, and the old, one of the things I remember is the old cook stove. Mom burnt wood in it, and you got up in the morning and you made fire in the cook stove to warm it up before you could even get dressed. But I'll tell you one thing. Some of the best food you ever wanted to eat was made in those old cook stoves. One of the things that Mom made was mush. We had a big iron pot, and she'd make that full of, mush. You take cornmeal and cook it, and you eat it while it's hot, or you can let it set a while, and it'll set to the place where you can slice it and fry it, like scrapple. Only with scrapple they put meat in it, and that was one of the good things that my family made, or my mother made, was scrapple. And she canned a lot. I guess I mentioned that before. She canned everything she could get her hands on: applesauce, tomatoes, and of course we always had a garden. One time the kids ate tops off the onions. We had onions in the garden, and some of the kids pulled the tops off, and even I think they got paddled for that.
Why would you want to, is what I'm wondering.
Oh, when we were kids, we did things. That's some of the things we did. And what's some of the other things Mom made in the cook stove? One of the things you sit in front of it in the mornings and keep warm while you got dressed. There was a cook stove in the kitchen, then in the living room there was what they called the room stove. And above that was above the room stove was a little register where there was a little bit of heat went up to the upstairs. And some of the other things that people take for granted now that we didn't have. Well, one was a bathroom. Of course, I think I talked about that before. And but we have sit here at the apartments and mentioned that already. Some of the best food you ever wanted to eat was cooked on a cook stove. And most of us that live here are elderly people, and there's some of the things that we remember as children. And my grandparents had a Victrola, what you'd call a record player now, and you wound it. It wasn't electric and it wasn't battery. You had to wind it. It must have some kind of a spring.
Yeah, I think you had to wind it just right so it would play right.
And when it would start to get wind down, it would go real slow, and you had to wind it quick. And some of the songs, I remember some of the songs that was on that old record player up at my grandparents'. And where have you been, Billy boy, Billy boy? Oh, where have you been, charming Billy? I have been to see my wife. She's the joy of my life. She's a young thing and cannot leave her mother. That's not good singing, but that's something like that. And it'll start to wind down, you wind it up again. And what was some of the things we were talking about long ago that we take for granted?
Well, you were telling me a little bit about how, the one thing Aunt Anna Margaret said about the microwaves.
Oh, yeah. When the microwave first came out, she said, what would I do with one of them? I don't want any of them. And I remember Ike and Linda had one before we did. And I wouldn't want to do without my microwave now. I never thought I'd want one either. What the heck would I want a microwave for?
And, I think that's probably true for a lot of things that are new, is people are like, well, what would you ever use that for? But then all of a sudden everybody has one because they don't know what to do without one.
That's right.
Like cell phones. Just about everybody has one now.
There's an old show on television that I've been watching, and they're advertising a Polaroid camera.
Yeah, I was here the other day. You were watching, it was I've Got a Secret, and that was one of the sponsors.
Polaroid camera, and they acted like that was really something great.
Well, I had a Polaroid camera one time. They were actually pretty cool.
They were, but now they just...
Of course, nowadays you have cameras like the one we're shooting this video with. They're digital.
Yeah, when Brad was here, he said, could he take a picture of one of my pictures? And I said, why don't you just take a picture of me? And so I sat on that chair and he took a picture of me. And he remember, the reason Aunt Oni and I took up painting, my mother had this ironing board. All it was a piece of wood. There was no legs or anything on it, but it was shaped like an ironing. And you laid one end on the table and the one end on the back of a chair. We had what we called a captain's chair, with just the height of the table. And that's what my mother ironed on.
If it worked.
Yeah, but I only wanted to paint it.
I remember when she did that.
So Brad has it.
Yeah, didn't she like paint it like all blue first and then painted a picture of the old Corbin house on it?
It had a picture of our house, because I remember she has a picture of the clothesline. My mother always had a clothesline. Of course, she never had a washer and dryer. That's something people take advantage of too now, that we take for granted, washer and dryer. Automatic, just throw the clothes in and back and get them done. We had to run water, carry water and heat it first, and carry it out and put it in the washer. Then you had a tub to first rinse, and they used bluing in the rinse water. This bluing it was supposed to make your white clothes look whiter.
I remember, seeing like old wringer washers like in antique places and stuff like that, and some people converted those over to electric. I guess that was what started the idea of an electric washing machine.
And you had to be very careful of those wringer washers. There was people who got their finger or their arm or their hands caught in the wringer. And a lot of things that we take it for granted now that we didn't have back in the old days. Back in the old days, of course, when you're 91, everything's back in the old days.
You might have said this in a video before, but tell the TV story about the guy that said, "I see you there."
Oh, that was Linda. When Linda was born, when she was little, we didn't have a TV. She's almost 70 now, will be this year. But then we got one. Of course, it was black and white. You didn't have if you had a color TV, that was special then too. Everything was black and white.
Yeah, it's not like today where everything's 4K and all this.
Yeah. So I suppose she was maybe 7. We got her a bicycle for Christmas and a doll, and she was in the living room, of course. The Christmas tree was in it, and she was sitting on the bicycle. That was before your mother was born. And looking at the TV, and a guy pointed his finger at her from the TV. It was Gabby Hayes. He said, "I see you, little blonde-haired girl, sitting there on your bicycle with your doll in there." And her eyes got big. I think she thought he actually saw her. That was good guessing on his part.
I mean, I could see how a guy would get away with that, because you imagine how many little girls would have fit that description.
Yeah, we've got a bicycle, blonde-haired girl and got a bicycle and a doll.
Plus, if it was around Christmas time, that would have made sense, because a lot of TV would have been live back then.
But that was a big surprise to her. Well, I think we all got a big kick out of that. And I told you some story about your mother, but about sweet peas being the gift of God's love.
Yeah, I remember that story.
Tennessee Ernie used to sing this song, "Sweet Peas, the gift of God's love." She was out helping her dad plant sweet peas, and she said, Daddy, they're the gift of God's love." Sweet peas.
And I'm sure his reaction was probably, "What?"
Well, I think he's the one that told me, because I thought it was cute. She said a lot of cute things. Like she wanted to grow up, I think I told you all that story. She wanted to grow up to be a Methodist nun. I've been a Methodist all my life, and I still am. But even my mother changed when the little Methodist church that we went to down in Pine Glen closed down. It was sort of like, our church was sort of like one-room schools that they used to have. There was no bathroom or heater or anything like that.
You just went in and there you were.
Yes, there was pews and so Mom, it closed down. She started going to the Brethren Church because it was near her, and she had friends that would stop and pick her up and take her to the Brethren Church. So then she started wearing a little prayer covering, like the Mennonites wear now. And she said, if it's a prayer covering, you wear it all the time because you're supposed to pray all the time. So my mother always wore her little prayer covering.
I think every picture I've ever seen of her, she had it on.
She had that little prayer covering. So I belong to the Methodist Church over here at McVaytown now, and our pastor is a lady. There are people too that think that a woman shouldn't be a preacher because back in the Bible they were having some problems in the church because the people wanted to go back and act and do the things they did before, and there was some contention within the church. And that was one of the things they said, tell your women to keep quiet in the church. Women didn't have too much to say back in those days.
Well, some people, these days are still old-fashioned and just stick to the old ways.
Yeah, I think your Mennonites are still, well, I know the Amish people are still that one. And Tom that lives down the hall here, I think their church believes his wife don't wear pants, slacks. Women aren't to wear men's clothes. Well, my slacks are not men's clothes.
That just goes to show you just how some people interpret things.
Everybody has their own interpretation of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think I talked a little bit about this up on the mountain that one day. Actually, some people have all these rules and regulations, and actually what Jesus said mostly was to love one another.
That's right.
And you can wear your long dress and your long hair and all that and still be a bitch.
Mm-hmm. Well, just look at how different people are today from one another. There's so many different people out there, with different beliefs, appearances, what have you.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean any of them are wrong.
And we try to get along with everybody and respect everybody's religion. You don't have to actually...
You don't have to go along with it.
go along with everything.
I think that's one thing that a lot of people forget is there's a difference, between, tolerance and acceptance. You can tolerate something without accepting it, and you can accept something for what it is. And, when it comes right down to it, that doesn't mean you have to agree with any of it.
Our maintenance man in here is in here now. And there's some other Mennonite people here, but he's a Mennonite. He's the nicest man. Very kind. If you ask him to do something, he's right on the ball. Like this morning when my commode wouldn't flush. I said something to him, he went right in there. And
had it taken care of.
Right.
Well, I think we're just about out of time for this one. Any closing words?
Well, one of the things I want to say is to love your neighbor as yourself and respect everybody's beliefs and be kind to one another. And pray for one another. At night when you can't sleep, think of all the people you can pray for. And I do. So I guess that's all for now.
All right, I guess we'll see everybody next time.
Right.